Hey, hello, hello, hello. Welcome back again. And I'm here back, just as usual, to rant about uh, whatever has come to my mind. And recently, I watched a movie called A Rat's Tale or The Rats, A Witcher's Tale. So, if you never heard of the series The Witcher, it's currently on Netflix, all seasons and all movies, and it's based on the books, or based on the games, or based on books about Geralt of Rivia and this world where there's magic, there's monsters, there's elves, there's dwarves. So it's that type of fantasy background. And The Rats is the tale of this group of misfits that was introduced in the last season of The Witcher. And I say last season not because it's the final season, but because it's the most recent season as of recording this video. Now, the rats, and when they were introduced, there was this separation, or from the previous season, uh, Geralt and Ciri, two of the characters that we've been following since the very first season. Uh, well, they got separated, and so now we follow their separate tales on this latest season of The Witcher. And when we see in the latest season, which I will cover in a separate video, she runs into this group of misfits, this group of, um, well, they're around her age and they do things that aren't really above water. You could say they're not. It's not completely legal. So they'll steal, they'll kind of rob other people, they'll scam. So they do their own thing, right? In order to survive. And it's everything is about survival. It's not that they're being malicious. It's just a way of surviving. And so we get introduced to the cast or the group itself. Um, Missile, we get introduced to Giselther, Kaylee, Iskra, Reef, and Assay? Yeah, I'm not really sure how to pronounce the character's name. But anyways, in The Rat's Tale, or I mean The Rats, um, we are focused on their story. Now, on kind of like a little bit of a spoiler, but when we begin the movie, um, we are beginning with Siri in the aftermath of the last season. And what had resulted is that now the rats are no longer, they're no longer. And the character that was responsible for that now has Siri, um, much like a captive. So she is really, you know, in her lowest of lows. But this other character who is the antagonist that was introduced very, very late, I think it was either in the last two episodes or in the last episode of the last season of The Witcher. But the thing is that he starts off saying, well, he starts talking about the rats, like, oh, you didn't know them that well, or, oh, uh, you should be really, I get it, you liked one of the members of the group and blah, 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 that type of thing. And he starts talking about their story. Now, I'll get it towards the end, like why I think this is a little bit confusing for me personally, but that's how we start the story. He tells their story to Siri. Now, when we start their story, they've already had formed their group, so they were already the rats, and they're in the middle of a scam. So they go to this town, to actually this kind of like a tavern type of thing, where they're doing bets on fighting. However, the manager's kind of like scam on the people there was that he would say, "Oh, here's this being who is a monster, a humanoid monster, and he's gonna fight a Witcher." Now, I know what you're going to think. No, it's not. It's not Geralt. This is a separate Witcher altogether. But we get introduced to a new Witcher, played by Dolph Lundgren. Now, it's been a while since I've seen him. I think the last movie I saw of his was either like Rocky or Universal Soldier. I know he was like in a few other. movies, but those are like the ones that come to mind when I think of Dolph Lundgren. He was an antagonist of Rocky, and he also well, of one of the movies, and he was also a Universal Soldier, which is a '90s movie if anybody remembers that one. And so he comes and he is actually drunk and he's pretend fighting against this supposed monster, and people are actually betting on the fight to see who's going to win. And so the scam on the Rats part is that you know they know where the money is hidden of of everything that's being collected, and so they create a distraction during the fight, and then they leave with the chest full of money. And so they leave, but they're caught. So obviously they go out in a hurry, and Dolph Lundgren does try to stop them. He's not able to. One, he's drunk, and two, we literally see that from years and years of drinking, he actually has lost some of his physical capabilities. Much like when it's actually very realistic because in the real world, right, people who chronically drink, they do end up with this this uncoordination of their bodies, especially if they stop drinking. Their body starts to go into the state of withdrawal, and so that affects how they move, how they walk, how they coordinate, like their nociception, like their capability of reading like what parts of their body is in what location, that type of thing. And so going back to the story, they do escape. The rats do escape, and they want to do a final scam. But what scam is it, right? And it has to be a big thing. Now they do run into uh, talks about, oh, a certain person is about to uh, do something, right? And it turns out that this person that they're going to run into, it has a past history with one of the members. Well, two, with both Miso and Ase, or As, or again, I do not know how they pronounce his name. And I did see the movie. Anyway, so the thing is, um, in their life before the rats, Miso was actually going to marry. She was a prominent member of her village, and she was going to marry into this like other rich family. However, when this person, the antagonist, I think it's Brickden. I think it's Brickden. The thing is that he goes with his band of, uh, well, basically pirates because they're going there to loot and to kill and to take people into slavery. And so they get there, they ruin the whole party. Missile gets, we'll just say that she doesn't end the same way that she started her day. And as he also goes through this difficult change because his family dies and he sees his sister being killed when he wanted to protect her, but he couldn't move. And so that leads him to have this complex of feeling like a coward, like he's doesn't deserve to be alive, right? Even though he does want to do his best to get revenge and to live a life that's worthwhile. That there was a reason why he survived, even though his sister didn't. And so once they go through their backstory, and especially Missile's backstory, she tries to convince them that they should do it because they will win a lot of money. I mean, they'll get a lot of profit. It's a lot of risk, but it's a high reward. And so between Iskra and uh, Gizelher, who is the kind of like the leader of the band, you know, um, oh yeah, and Reef because there's this other character Reef who is also part of the band. They do agree that okay, they'll do it, but it's not going to be about taking revenge. It's about a job. It's part of a job, and they're not going to be looking for revenge. So they'll think things carefully. They're not going to act out of impulse and go in, go out, richer than before. All right, but they do run into uh, Dolph again. Well, his character is Brecken, and well, they're running into him again. And the reason is that they actually need his help because when they are doing this, well, basically when they're doing this, when they're spying on Brickton, and trying to get the details on where they're keeping the money and how they're gonna go about stealing it, they do find out that Bragden has a monster. He's doing like a fighting ring as well, but he has a monster who he's going to introduce to the fight. And unfortunately, that's where the money is. The monster is kind of guarding the money, and so if you're going to meet a monster, then you need a witcher to fight the monster, and that's where Dolph's character comes into play. I would say the kind of like the biggest thing is that he is a drunk, and we do find out later that it's kind of due to trauma. Like in everything in this series, there's like a past history. So, just to do it something quick, um, Bracken, Dolph's character, he is a Witcher from a different faction of Geralt, so they're not like part of the same Witcher group. Um, while Geralt is from the Wolves, um, Dolph is from I believe the Cats or something like that. But the thing is that with him, uh, there was a mission that Geralt did in the first season, and before Geralt came into play for that mission, Dolph was actually there with another Witcher. Things didn't go well, and so they end up, he ends up losing his partner, and because he has felt like a coward and how undeserving things are, he went ahead and you know he's been drinking himself to death at this point, and so they sober him up. They start training. They start practicing. They do all the preparations they can, and once the night arrives, that's where things kind of go not the right way. Why? Because who comes into play, who appears all of a sudden, is actually the antagonist, the same one who's supposedly telling the tale. Now, I didn't say his name, but he is Leo Bonhart. And Leo Bonhart, he is not a Witcher, but he is a Witcher killer. So he is an impressive fighter. He does have this imposing presence. And this, you know, during this play to steal the money, they do arrive to where the money is being kept. And Dolph does fight the monster, and he thinks that he has killed the monster, but the monster isn't dead. So they're all feeling pretty sure that they're getting away, but then Lil Bonhart, who was there for the fight, representing a cousin of his, he actually shows up and starts fighting the Witcher. Now, as you might have guessed, he does beat the Witcher. He does win, and the group barely survives. I mean, they barely run away with their lives. The only reason why they were able to escape was because Dove, he gets them to go. He closes the gate, and it's just him versus Leo Bonhart. And I don't remember what. I think the monster had been killed at that point because they did fight the monster again, and this time they do kill the monster. I'm not going into a lot of details in this movie, but the point of the matter is that the rats in their tale in this movie, they already are a group. It's more about kind of like how they meet Leo Bonhart, but more than half of the movie, they don't meet Leo Bonhart. Actually, they don't meet him until the very end. And so, which also means that Leo Bonhart doesn't meet them until the very end. That's where I'm a little bit confused at this point because how does Leo Bonhart know about their story if he has only met them once for like a brief amount of time, which is when they were trying to steal the treasure. And not just that, but we're talking about the events happened 6 months prior to the events in uh, this last season of The Witcher. So it's kind of confusing. Like, how does he know their story and their background when he only met them once? I don't know. It would have made much more sense if the story had been told from the perspective of one of the members of the Rats and not focused on kind of like that one mission where Leo Bonhart was involved at the very, very end. So I don't know. It's kind of confusing on that front, and that's why I say it's confusing for me, but maybe for other people it makes sense. Now, this is kind of like the end of the movie because they run away with their lives, and that is that in essence. So we don't get like more out of the story apart from that. Now, when I think about this movie, is it a good movie? Does it really play a part of the Witcher's universe? And I would say it does, and it also doesn't. So again, the fact that Leo Bonhart is telling the tale doesn't make sense, but it is a nice story that kind of complements the series. I would have liked this to be the story to have been told like from the perspective of one of the group members, and not just that, not focused on this one kind of mission they had. Um, if they would have told like from the beginning, like how they met, or maybe from the point of okay, Iskra and Reef and Gazahur, maybe they were already a group, and then Missile and Ass they join in later. So when they join in, if we started that movie from that perspective, that would have been a good starting point. But the way that they talk about this mission that happened 6 months prior to meeting Siri doesn't really make sense. At least not to me. Is it bad? No, it's not bad. It's not a bad movie. I mean, it still goes through the motions of, uh, that the world has magic, it has monsters, it has all of this, and that they are doing what they can to survive. So that it's still on brand. It's just this particular story, I don't think it fits, and I don't think the messenger who tells the story fits with the overall message. So would I watch it again? I would. I just wouldn't. Just wouldn't really pay much attention to like this overall lack of foresight on the stories or how incongruent it is. But it is enjoyable. I mean, you do have these characters that are abandoned misfits. You do have that, you know, even though they're not robbing food because they're not spreading the wealth, but they are robbing from the people who are extorting the lower class. So in a way, it's kind of like they're getting their revenge vicariously through the rats. So it is a good story. I don't think it's the story that necessarily you would expect if you've been watching The Witcher. But anyway, I'll leave it here for now. Um, what were your thoughts? Did you watch The Rats? Have you not watched it? Have you been wanting to watch it? Is this the first time that you hear about it? Let me know in the comments. Let me know. Anyway, I'll leave you there and take care. And remember, be kind to everyone around you because, well, you never know what they're going through. You never know. All right. See you later. Bye bye.